Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be going through how leading sales teams are using AI today in the real world, where you should avoid using AI in your sales team, and how to how to leverage AI to make one person feel like a huge team. I think that's kind of the crux of what we're going into. And the reason we're making this video is this is actually a question I think that we get a lot. And sometimes there's some question marks. And one of the issues with when you're like leveraging AI is that there are sort of countless, infinite, almost opportunities that you could use it. But it can be very helpful to know like how people are using it day to day. And I am Trevor. I'm the co-founder of Orbit Sling. We help sales teams build systems, and often these systems obviously involve AI in today's world. And yeah, I think you'll get a good idea of what's useful, what's not useful, and some of the possibilities of what you would be able to do on your sales team. So without any further ado, let's dive in. We'll kind of go through and start first with why. It's always a good place to begin, right? So where should sales teams be spending their time? Okay, so I think most people would agree with me in this particular case that the best in an ideal world where a salesperson is spending their time doing the highest leverage thing, and obviously this is why it's an ideal world, it's not a realistic world. But in an ideal world, we would argue that a salesperson would spend 100% of their time talking to prospects. At the end of the day, that is the thing that moves the needle. Talking to prospects leads them to, you're qualifying prospects, you're sending proposals over to prospects, and they're buying from you. Like, it's a pretty straightforward system. So the kind of number one thesis here is that more of a sales team's time should be spent on this, and this is what we want to magnify. Because a lot of the time we find sales teams, maybe the average person's maybe doing, let's say, 5 sales appointments per week. Maybe sometimes in a lot of teams it's more like 10, but 5, like, it starts becoming difficult to justify what else it is that you are doing. And of course, our number one enemy here to this is admin. And this is sort of a scary word that people use to mean a whole lot of different things. And actually today I want to go through and just break down some of what admin really is, how I would see admin now, what those specific tasks kind of are. And maybe we can do a bit of a comparison of like, in the last 10 years, you did thing, and now we recommend doing it this way, or at least this is an opportunity that is now open. So I think without further ado, let's jump in, get right to that. So I think the first biggest thing, and I think what we can do is put a line here in the middle, a nice ugly line. Look at me and my mouse skills. And then we can kind of do like 10 years here. So this is like the past 10 years. Old way, and let's go with like the past 10 years is the old way. And then over here, we've just got 2026. Let's just go now. Now, how we should do it. Cool. So first off, let's start with list building. This has been an important thing, obviously, for the last... Maybe we shouldn't put a line here. Let's just put this in the middle here. So we've got the old way, the sort of now way to do things, and then we've got starting off with list building. So what was the old way that we were doing list building, right? And now there's been a kind of a few iterations of this, but essentially what would happen in the past 10 years is most businesses that sell B2B, they've got a list of potential prospects. There are some people probably assigned to spend some time cleaning up that list, investigating that list. Like, if the issue becomes over time, these lists become out of date. And so we end up with a system where we've got to keep it up to date. Now, there's a few more things with list building here. So in the past 10 years, usually there'd be, like the list was big. It was a big list. It wasn't very specialized. There might be some specializations there. Where you stored this was very different. Maybe this was in your CRM, maybe it's in your HubSpot. And then over time, that's just getting like insanely out of hand. Maybe it was actually just an ugly spreadsheet on Google Drive. there's been a lot of different iterations of this, and most businesses still have some form of this hanging around. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but often where we're changing things now, where AI starts changing the game here is on the here and the now. That ends up being we should be using signals. So let's say with the old way, we had like big lists. I'm not going to draw with this. I should use, let's go with text here. Big lists, non specialized often, quickly out of date. Let's go a little bigger with that. What is that? Control Alt equals. There we go. So now I think the big difference is signals first. And I think with that said, and we'll get into what signals are here in a moment, but with that said, signals first also kind of leads into specialized, let's go smaller specialized lists. And what do we mean by that? Well, generally, we'll go for ideal prospects. So kind of we would split these up. And you could do this with the old lists too. Don't get me wrong. Again, a lot of this stuff, you've been able to do it with a team of people for a long time, but now AI is just kind of making this the normal way. Let's say like the top 1% of sales teams in the world were, 5 years ago, were building these like specific lists, looking for signals. They had systems to watch for signals. And they were building these smaller specialized lists and reaching out to them. AI definitely enables it so that even like smaller teams that don't have all of these resources are actually able to do this. So let's just go with like one ICP. So that's an ideal customer profile at a time, generally. And what are signals? Well, signals pretty much mean what you would think. They can be things like hiring. So a company is hiring. If a company, let's say you make an accounting software and a company is hiring a bookkeeper, well, maybe there's some signal there that like they're feeling like their current system isn't keeping up with what they have. Maybe your software somehow makes it easier. Boom, we've got a list of companies in, and maybe you could narrow this down to an industry. Companies in one industry who are looking to expand their bookkeeping team, we actually can come in and show you that we can actually do this in a quicker way. We've got some software that automatically does the like capturing of receipts and categorizing them so that what maybe took 2 people can now be like 1 person a few hours a week. Or, we've actually I had a client that we did some work for who basically we did this. We built their entire subscription. They had a whole bunch of different subscription types that were coming in, and every week the founder, she would sit and kind of go through for 3, 4, 5 hours every week, go through all of the things in Stripe and kind of reconcile those into Xero because they didn't work well together, their accounting software. We built a system that did that for them automatically, and then once a month they get an email. She gets an email on the first day of the month to say like, "Hey, these were the handful of invoices that we were unable to categorize because maybe they were missing information from the website, etc." And instead of when a couple hours a week or more when they had heavier weeks, it ends up being more like 15, 20 minutes every month, if not even every quarter. So you can get the idea here. So that can be signal number 1, hiring. Signal number 2 could be funding. If companies are getting funding and you sell something, it's a sign that they have money and they need to get certain outcomes. If you're selling something that can help them get to that outcome, then you're more likely to hear from them. Probably don't mention this to them. I don't know. People find it. I find the times where we use funding as a signal and then don't mention it in the outreach or chats with people, we just have better outcomes. Like it's more, you just take it as a sign that they have money and you don't have to call attention to it. What else? We've got all sorts of different things. It could be new hire, new role. So, for example, if somebody's got a new marketing manager, maybe you sell analytics setups or something. And if somebody's got a new marketing manager, you know that maybe they inherited a mess. It's a chance to get in the door, chat with that person about it. There's a lot of different signals that we can find for people. And it's not limited to just these. That can be things like news or blog posts. We can do social media like LinkedIn. You get the idea. There's kind of an endless thing. And so what you can do now is build systems to watch these things. And there are things that do exist already. So we've got tools. Maybe we go over here and do some tools. I don't know why the default is so small here. So some of the tools you can do with that, you've got Clay. That's a list building system that has the ability to watch for specific things. You could build systems around something like Apify. What's Apify? Apify is a tool that basically people build these web scrapers that can scrape various parts of the web. Maybe that's job posting sites. Maybe that's like AngelList, who shows people that get funding, etc. You can build that. You'd also be able to, basically there's a lot of different ways that you could watch these things. And then you can set them up so that they run every so often. You've got depends on what you're selling probably, but there's going to be a freshness that makes sense for you and your team. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we go with list buildings. And then what do we do next? I think the next one is qualification. And this is where AI can shine. I guess I should go all caps here. I should know how to spell qualification. That is right. Okay. Qualification in the past was a lot harder to kind of get around to, right? So maybe you were on the call trying to figure this out. Maybe you had people checking this. So they were going through the list, kind of, I guess you'd call them like data upkeep people. A lot of companies with bigger sales teams have this, where they're kind of going through the list and just checking the qualifications. You could research on the website. You could research on LinkedIn. You could research on, just whatever you've got. Maybe it's a blog. We can say that's part of the website, right? These days, actually, it's not that different. But AI can actually do this stuff, and you can build systems for this. And I guess we should caveat here a little bit with what is AI and what isn't AI. When I'm mentioning AI here, and whenever I'm talking about systems, I am not talking about LLMs necessarily. I'm talking about LLMs, but I am not talking about going back and forth with ChatGPT, for example. We're talking about something where there's a workflow. Let's say there's a node, and then we've got something that happens. So there's a node here where we look at HubSpot. We grabbed someone's website. And then we kind of take it from there. So then we use an LLM via the API. So that's like the back end where computers talk to each other. Via the API, we're able to summarize the website. And that might be checking for a fit. That might be we just want a description of what it is that they sell, on and on and on. So whenever I'm talking anything about AI here, I'm not talking about just chatting back and forth to a chat interface. We're talking about building something into some sort of workflow so that it actually happens. So all of these things are not gone. It's just that now we're able to do them. And again, this is where tools like Clay, for example, which we use, shine pretty heavily, but you could kind of build it in anything. You could have someone code it if you wanted. But the whole idea here is you're able to scrape websites. You're able to verify emails. You're able to do all this kind of stuff. And now we're just able to do it a whole lot faster. So now I can do something like take an entire list of people that I want to sell to, and I'm able to write a few prompts just to say, like, this is what it is I sell. Here's your inputs. Like, go ahead, scrape the website. Here's their LinkedIn profile and the company's LinkedIn profile. Check all three of these against these points and give me a score, let's say, of whether that's a good fit for my business or not. And so what that means is that more and more we're able to have our lists have the qualification built into the list. Like, you no longer need this to be two steps. It's kind of just like, as part of list building, we also do qualification. Um, and so this kind of becomes like, this would have taken ages to do, manually. And this was this was kind of like your company's secret sauce in the past. Well, now AI just at least democratizes that. Like, now anybody can pick this up. You can pay for a tool, you can build a tool to do it specifically for your business. Again, like we use for a lot of our clients, we use Clay to do it just because they have a really good system for scraping a website, scraping a few sources, putting it together and giving us a score of like, is this potentially a fit? High, and give us a confident level. So it's going to be like 80% or higher is 80 out of 100 is high, 60, 40, 30, and then, absolutely not a fit or unable to tell. Basically, all of that lets us segment our lists there during building. And so these two things are pretty powerful together. So we're able to build lists starting with signals, and then, of course, automatically in that list while we're building it, qualify people. That ends up putting you pretty far ahead because that means that by the time you actually start contacting these people, whether that's through email, whether that's on LinkedIn, whether that's, trying to show ads to them, whatever it might be, by the time you're doing that, you already have a pretty good idea they're probably a fit for what it is that you offer. And that, in today's day and age, to cut through the noise, means that we kind of start already through some of the noise. Yeah. So that gives you an idea of qualification. So let's dive into the next one. Next up, we've actually got personalization. And I'll kind of group these together. They're very different things. And I keep forgetting I did outreach, personalization. All right. What I want to do here is actually I'll include like LinkedIn, email. I'll do cold email, LinkedIn, cold email, and kind of just anything else that you've got. You could maybe even throw SMS here. It's probably not so relevant for most of you B2B people. LinkedIn, cold email, SMS. I guess we'll just put email marketing here. It is distinct, I would say, from cold email. And this is just the day that we're able to do a whole lot more outreach personalization. So in the old way, what did we do? We did 15 minutes of research on somebody. Then we probably had a template. We'd say, we look for things in common. Yeah, you get the idea, right? We would spend all this time doing that. And actually, you almost didn't have to do this in the past. That's the other thing, is that you used to kind of be able to go like insert first name, insert company, and people, even in like 2018, people were like, oh, that's impressive, like, because maybe the spam emails of the past, of course, had zero personalization. So by just filling in some variables, we started considering that personalization. But now more and more, like, people expect a cold email, a cold LinkedIn DM to be like very specific to them to show that you've done your work. You might even send a Loom video here. And basically, this is where things can shine and where a lot of the outreach in the world right now is going horribly wrong. So maybe it's worth discussing quickly. We're now just able to do all of this faster. But we're also able to do this now worse than before. Both of these things, I should put asterisks here, they're both absolutely possible, and this is kind of where we're running into issues. There's a lot of bad AI personalized outreach out there, and it's not just M dashes, it's usually just you can tell when it's a robot and you can tell when it's a person. And the goal of leveraging outreach personalization here is to leverage the AI and have people not necessarily know. Like they might have a little bit of an inkling, and that's okay because I think people are naturally going to be skeptical of this. But overall, the idea here is that we should basically, okay, before I dive into like what you should do, what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't have a one size fits all prompt for generating these. You shouldn't just take one of the ones that these kind of gurus and stuff are saying to go out there like, hey, I saw this, love this, thought I'd reach out, thought I'd reach out, thought I'd reach out. I get so many thought I'd reach outs that it's like now it's a mark that somebody is using AI, right? Like it's a thing. What should you do instead? And this isn't really my idea. This is actually Eric Nowozowski of um, Growth Engine X. Is they send like hundreds of thousands of cold emails per day, I think, to their clients. They said something like 15 million, or like, I think it was in a month, or I can't remember the time period, but they send a lot of cold emails. That's the point. And they get really high response rates. Like the number of emails they send out to get a positive reply is actually like industry leading low. And what he said to do, and I think, and like we've since adopted and we use it on any outreach that we do, whether it's LinkedIn or we do a lot of cold email as well. We want to simulate this 15 minutes of research. We want to come up with a template. I think it's important to do that. We want to come up with things in common, discuss, come up with a reason. And so what we do, our process is we do this manually for like 3 prospects. Right, we 3 prospects who are already like, this is probably a good fit. They came back from the qualification up here. We based it on signals as well. There's already a good chance they're good prospects. We do it with 3 that we take a look at the website, take a look at LinkedIn. What information am I manually, excuse me, what information am I manually looking for? And then writing that into a high performing cold email. And then we use that process of those 3 as examples in our prompting, come up with a prompt to fit it. And then we can then use AI to go do that 15 minutes of research, simulate it, I should say. Take a look for those things in common, draw on the examples, and then write part of it. Usually we don't write the whole thing with AI. Maybe this will change, but AI is just usually not good. Don't tell it it's writing outreach. Don't tell it any of that. Just tell it you want it to draft you and then refine you a message for for your own sales activities. Even then, maybe just tell it it's a persuasive writer and leave it at that. Never tell it. If you tell it that it's doing cold email, it will actually like do all of the things SEO says cold email you should do anyway. And so don't write the whole thing with AI. And part of the reason for that is, one, the output's pretty bad. But the second reason I should say, is also that usually not only is that output bad, but it doesn't give you a chance to be a little bit consistent. And what I mean by that is usually the offer. The offer itself should be written because then you're able to A/B test with it. What's working, what's not working, and how you present the offer is very important in a cold email. And so usually we want that to be the one part of the email that doesn't change. It stays fairly similar so that the data we're getting back on it is at least helpful to steer us in the right direction with what's going to work and what's not going to work. So yeah, TLDR, outreach personalization, again, doesn't change very much. You can still send a Loom video that's going to be custom. And I will say, like, don't use like one of these AI services that sort of pretends to be, a Loom video. Like, people can tell. And I think more and more, maybe I should zoom back out. I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but there are parts of this that you don't want to use AI for. We're using it here to start the conversation. Once somebody replies to a cold email, human on the line, there to go. Reason for that, could you do it with AI? Yeah, you could. And I'm sure you could get your prompts like really close. let's say 80%. And I literally had a client of mine ask me this the other day, like, why don't you just like automate it? And the reason is, even if you can make a system that gets it like 90% of the time, that last 10% that you would get if you just had a human on this, like responding to this, that last 10% could be a lot of revenue that you're just like throwing away at the beginning. So you're kind of throwing away, putting the horse, what is it? Putting the cart before the horse. Like you're throwing away that potential revenue over just trying to save a little bit of time. And again, like responding to somebody who has now said that they're interested is actually one of the things that we want people to do. That's not admin. That's what they should be doing in an ideal world, right? Yeah. So let's continue with that. And the next thing up is actually proposal creation. And rather than maybe I won't do this sort of like before after thing, like last 10 years and now, what I'll do is just show you a little bit about what's possible. I think the first place to start is these AI note takers, Fireflies and Otter, and there's a whole bunch of them, right? They're cool, right? Because they at least they've got systems to sort of figure out like action points and prompts and what else is needed. Excuse me. What did you tell the client that you were going to do? They capture all of that, and then they usually send it to your email, right? This is another case of to me this is similar to like chatting with ChatGPT. Like it's not like I have to take the time, chat to ChatGPT, take something back from ChatGPT and put it somewhere else. Anytime you're doing that, like we know at Orbit Sling, we can systemize that. So what should we do instead? So what we do, this is our process at the moment, and I've rolled this out for a few clients. We actually have kind of a combo system. We do two things. So, here we've got during the meeting, the AI note taker takes notes. Great. We also have a sales form. And now this needs to be simple because nobody wants to do, a whole bunch of, how can I just like arrow this here? Yes. Nobody wants to do a whole bunch of admin work after. So this should be something like 3-4 minutes of work. And so what's this sales form? Well, usually it's just a few kind of items here. I'll go a bit smaller here, and it's going to be things like pricing. Maybe you didn't say that specifically on the call. Just like notes, just anything you didn't say, right? That's the idea here. Anything you didn't say on the call, and then kind of just sales person insights, let's call this. Anything you didn't really necessarily say on the call that you would want taken into context on the proposal. Then we've got the proposal system. And you can use whatever you want for this, but generally what we do is you need something that has a template or a couple of templates, depending on like the services that you sell. Usually you're going to want to kind of match this up. So there's some nuance here in systemizing this before we even talk about AI. On a sales team, the top performing sales teams that we've worked with, all of them have some sort of script. Now, I don't mean like they're reading off of a piece of paper in front of their eyes and they have to follow it. I mean more like, let's call it a structure. There needs to be a structure of the calls. And they don't have to, and this is where the beauty of AI comes into. You're able to steer, if that structure, like you start off with that structure, you have like a list of things that you definitely want to cover, because we've all had like a bad sales call where we got off the call and realized like, oh, I didn't get all this information that was actually really important to working with this person. So you want to have some sort of system that the whole team generally follows, where we go through, we hear about the person's problem. This is the one we use, right? Let's talk about the problem. We want to magnify the problem, make sure that they've told us the problem. Let's kind of dig at the problem and dig deeper into the problem so that pain becomes more real. And then when we're talking about a solution to that problem, we still highlight the pain. Like we highlight the opposite of the pain, I should say. we show like, okay, well, how much is this problem costing the business? How much is this costing in headache of the founder? How much is this costing in potential revenue, in real revenue, whatever we can, whatever the problem is, depends on what it is that you sell. And then you have put yourself into the position to be able to frame that solution. You're a doctor. We're saying what hurts, where does it hurt, what about here, poking and prodding to try and figure out the kind of base of the problem, and then prescribing something that will fix it. And the prescription here is basically the proposal. And so, yeah, I say all of this because I do think in general you need to get more out of your proposals. A lot of teams could double what they get out of proposals if they just spent the time on the sales call talking about a problem, figuring out what hurts, and making sure that the prescription actually, the person feels heard and that prescription seems like it's going to actually fix their problem, and basing that in reality of like revenue or time saved, which is also, I guess you could call that profit in a way. Most of these things can be extrapolated down into money, right? It's business. Business is about money. So what we do here now is that we actually, let's just take away the proposal. We use AI here to fill in template. And now the salesperson does a final version, and they sell it and they send it, and hopefully they get the sale. Right? That's the idea. So what it is here that we're doing is we are saving time, but that's not necessarily the most important part. So, but just to give you an idea of the timeline, like my AI note taker comes onto a call. After the call, I quickly fill out this sales form. Both of those things go into our system. AI fills in the templates. And so within about sometimes it can take a little longer because we're filling out a big template. But let's say within about 5 to 10 minutes, we've got a proposal like nearly ready to send. It's probably 80% of the way there. It has the pricing because I've given it information about the pricing that I want to charge them. And I'm going to check it. I'm going to make sure that the Stripe invoice got created and all of this stuff, and then finalize and send. That's cool, right? Like a lot of sales people have a tendency to spend way more time on proposals than they should. And there's a good reason for that. And that is that people have a feeling, of course, that this is important, and it is important. But often that time mostly should have been spent anyway in the call. So we won't go like deeply onto this, but that's one thing, right? So we are literally saving time, but I don't think that's the most important thing here. I think that the most important thing that we're doing here is we are reducing the speed, reducing the time, increasing the speed of sending that proposal. If I have a meeting today with somebody, they dig through the points. By the end of the call, like I feel the pain of my situation, and I feel a little bit of hope at the solution that they've given me. Well, if I wait now like 3 days to get a proposal, it can work and it can come off, and maybe I'll pay it. But that pain, as more time goes on, that pain, right? Like that pain that I feel is less present because just, time heals all wounds, as they say. So it's a lot more like what we can do here is this also gives us the impression. So if you can send this in short, this enables us to send a proposal on the same day that we have a sales call. We have a rule at Orbit Sling that we have to send it within 24 hours, but most of the time, and we measure this, and this is something to measure because it can be kind of fun to measure. Because it's like a friendly competition basically between salespeople. What we measure is how fast we do this. And usually our proposal our sales call to send proposal rate is down to like about 30 to 40 minutes on average, depends on the week. And that actually shows a lot of stuff. Like that shows the prospect that you're serious about what you do. You understood their problem. Like you're very action oriented because that's what people want. They want to have you solve their problem as fast as you can, and you're going to have a timeline there, and you've basically told them like this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. boom, you're way more likely to get the sale. I think I don't really have any data on this, but like the longer you wait, I think we've all seen the longer you wait on to send a proposal, the like less likely that proposal is to come off. And so, yeah, this is something I think definitely is worth doing. And these are some of the ways that you can use AI. There are definitely other ways. We won't dive into this time because this is a little more sales focused. We won't dive into account management, but there are definitely things that you can do. But what we do at Orbit Sling and kind of the whole point of this, and maybe I'm a bit rambly, I don't usually make scripts for these videos, and I'm not very good at talking on camera just yet. But where we are these days is we're able to just save a lot of the time that used to go into this stuff and let you as a salesperson spend more of your time actually doing what matters, talking to prospects, having meetings with them, sending proposals. And I mean like not spending 10 hours on a proposal, but just like sending it fast, showing action orientation, and just, you know, rinse, lather, and repeat, as they say, with the old shampoo bottles that we used to read. Um, and I think the last thing I would want to cover here is just a little bit about where I think AI is going in the sales cycle. I think there's a lot of people using it incorrectly, and I think that actually, like long term, that's going to damage your brand. I heard a funny quote from a guy, Eric, that I follow, Eric Michaud. He's got a YouTube channel as well. He said something like, he said, the way people are using AI, and I should have looked this up because I can't exactly remember how he said it, but he basically said, the way people are using AI, it's like if you spend all this time on your brand and you're building this company that you're really proud of. Um, he likened that to, and then using AI for it, he likened that to buying a Ferrari and then taking it through like a car wash and spraying it with mayonnaise, which was just like an amusing, weird way out of left field, I guess, to imagine it. But he's got a point. And I think where we're going at the moment with AI is like people are tired of getting outreach. People are tired of like customer chatbots being AI. People are tired of like AI. I've been getting like AI voicemails on LinkedIn, and like people can tell. We can all tell, and like the models will get better. But I do think it's safe to say, for the moment at least, and this might change, that you can definitely tell. And so what I think people are going to do, there's going to be a revolution within sales, and that is going to be that people are going to want to do business with people more. They want to talk to a real person. And if you can leverage AI to magnify the human aspect of your business, that's going to be how you make a difference in 2026 and beyond. That's been us today. There's always links in the description of any tools that I mentioned. Let me know in any comments if something wasn't clear, or if you have specific questions about how you can use it in your sales team. And yeah, if you want to take care of any of that, again, plug the business. At Orbit Sling, we are rolling out systems like this and helping people build their AI-powered sales teams all over the world in multiple industries. We work with biotechnology, marketing agencies. We do a lot of it. So if you want to schedule a call, I'll have something in the description. And otherwise, have a good rest of your day.